The Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. Real Doctor Who fans with real Doctor Who opinions.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast, a podcast dedicated to discussing and reviewing all things Doctor Who, Big Finish, and other science fiction stuff that tickles our fancy. In this episode, I've decided to move on from the RTD. I think we're almost done looking at that era unless we have a formal podcast with myself, Liam, and maybe Legion, joining me to discuss the RTD Part 2 era, the successes, the rises and downs. But I've already done that. I feel as though I going down that lane would be, just kicking a dead horse at this point. What I want to look at is the fallout revolving around Ncuti Gatwa. Now, I'd love to have a clever title for the podcast, like, the 15th Doctor shooted himself in the foot or whatnot. But, I'm actually just reacting to Who culture and a couple of things that was recommended to me because of the fallout revolving around Ncuti's exit in Doctor Who. And I was going to play part of the Who culture video, but I don't want to. YouTube is being very heavy-handed with what they're moderating and whatnot, transitional things. So I'm just going to use some of the introductory things to discuss the exit of Ncuti Gatwa from Doctor Who, giving you my thoughts. And also, I will tell you the comment section on this video from Who Culture, very interesting. Now, I also find it quite interesting that there is some, they're not, they're not pulling every single punch, which I feel as though Who Culture generally does. Previous host of that, YouTube channel left and then had a video on his own YouTube channel basically saying that how he had to criticize the show because he wasn't kind of allowed to. Now, since that apology video or explanation, I guess is a better word, has now since been pulled down from his own personal YouTube channel. So very interesting stuff going along. Again, I do believe that the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast is the best podcast because we say things as we actually see them. I think, are fair and balanced, or at least I try to be. And without further ado, I'm going to get into the what culture, the truth about Ncuti Gatwa's exit. I'm going to first off just play this introduction right here.
It was always the plan to do this amount of seasons.
So that was, it looks like Ncuti on the set of the Reality War or whatnot, discussing that it had always been planned 2 seasons. And I have listened to a couple of things that Who Culture, has said, and she basically said that it is clever wordplay done by probably Ncuti, RTD, and maybe the BBC, because in actuality, there is truth behind everything. That yes, they were under contract for 2 seasons with Disney Plus. And it goes differently because he was asked, I believe, on one of the Radio 4 hosts if he about, going against the Daleks. And Ncuti said, I'd be so angry if I ever, or what did he say? I'd be so angry if I never got to face a Dalek. And he said, I think regarding this, he says, I've heard chats about me not ever facing a Dalek. This is from season 1 of the show. So season 1 was done and post-processed. The scripts probably for season 2 was already ready to go. And he has said, I have heard chats about me not ever facing a Dalek. I would be so angry if that was the case. By the time I'm done with Doctor Who, I had better have faced a Dalek. What on earth would be the point of me being Doctor Who without facing a Dalek? Now, that is very interesting because we did have, according to RTD, both of these were basically recorded back to back, or season 1, season 2, or season 1A, season 1B, because he wants them to they're all one season, which again doesn't really, I think, work or make sense, but that's besides the point. I think that it is a shame. And you did have a moment of a Dalek, you know, in the background somewhere, I believe in the reality war, but nowhere near an actual Dalek episode. So, I mean, I guess we got that box ticked, but I think it's kind of almost cheap to actually count over that. It just doesn't work. And yeah, if I was one of the doctors, I mean, when you think back about the classic era, you had William Hartnell facing the Daleks, what, 4 times? The original one, Dalek Invasion, The Chase, and Master Plan. Then you had Patrick Troughton face in Power and Evil. John Pertwee, you had 3 Dalek stories. You had Day, you had Planet, and then you had Death, I believe, right? And then Tom Baker had 2. And then, let's see, Davidson had 1 with the Revelation. Baker had 1, and McCoy had Remembrance. And I guess you could say the only doctor, a modern day doctor, or classic and current day, was actually the Eighth Doctor, if you don't count any of the Big Finish audios. So, and now, with that being said, Ncuti is also on that list of classic slash modern day Doctor Who's who have never faced the Dalek. And yeah, I think that is super sad. I think that there's a lot of stuff missing. I think that it could have been very interesting. I know that there was some hyperbolic reaction to, because I believe in the same interview, he would he said that he was going to possibly grind on a Dalek and destroy it. And I never, I believe it was a quote. I don't know if it was ever uttered into a, camera slash microphone or whatnot, but it was a quote. And a lot of people who kind of already were on the fence or already not liking where the show was going took that and ran with that. And, not the fairest comparison. It could have, you didn't know what his facial mannerisms were. You didn't know, uh, a couple of different things. So I think that that would be an unfair um, situation. Also, regarding Shooty's exit, you had RTD famously saying, "I'm working on the 4th script now for season 3. It's not actually commissioned, that's still up in the air, but that's the same for every TV program." Now, the interesting thing about that quote is that was a quote. It was picked up, and there was a page on the Radio Times with that article, with that quote. And the Radio Times has scrubbed that page, that article from existence. The only place that you can find it is if there was anybody who had it up on their YouTube video that referenced it and had a screenshot of it, because that no longer exists and it's almost kind of been in denial to some extent. And RTD said, continuing that, Shooty's going to be off in a play, the importance of being earnest. And so we're coming back after that. Amazingly, we might be shooting those scripts early next year. So this is about season 3. Those scripts have been ready by August for an August prep. So the whole idea of it's always been a plan of 2 series and done also is false and can go by the wayside because, if only, luckily, no formal bit of technology exists where people can speak certain things. And once you put something on the internet, or the interweb or whatnot, it stays there forever. I think I think some people need to be wiser about that. I tell my students all the time, I cannot believe that everybody has a phone with a video camera and stuff like that, and then records themselves doing the most stupid things possible and then uploads it willingly. Let's see. According to this, it says we did a second series this year. The Christmas special is coming up, and we're filming the third series next year. This is again RTD talking about near the end of, I guess propping up the show for the third season. Wait, is it Shooty or is this RTD or is this what happened at the Graham Norton show? No, that's Shooty from the Graham Norton show. We did this second series. This Christmas special is coming up, and we're filming the third season next year. So even he had no idea that it was going to be a 2-year and done, even though it would be believed, or it's almost wanting you to likely believe that it was a 2-year and done scenario. Um, let's see. I I don't know. I find the reality between everything so interesting. The Who culture also has everything um, where they what's her face? They noted that every single time that Poppy was brought up, all the conversations occurred in the TARDIS. Verena Sethu's character was constantly talking about Poppy in the TARDIS when we were in the Rally War. And they did this with trying to keep the same, because they couldn't go back in time to some of these locations. So they did all of these scenes in the TARDIS, which means that that wasn't initially the plan. When they were in the Robot Revolution, her hairstyle and whatnot was completely different to what it was in the Reality War when she was talking about, Poppy. So again, there's massive inconsistencies with the story right there. It says, according to this, the original ending of Doctor Who season 2 before the reshoots was that the Doctor, Ruby, and Belinda all have a big party. Think about Amy and Rory's wedding. The Winx is a DJ. The Vlinx. Sorry, the Vlinx is a DJ. I hate that character so much. And it says Susan has seen watching them from afar, which would have been the cliffhanger for series 3. So again, we had the Susan in the mind or whatnot of the Interstellar Song Contest, supposedly a cliffhanger, and then we got you know or the 15th Doctor regenerating into Rose, which is I think a lot of people have said that that's desperate casting or whatnot. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm gonna look at some of the. Um, that being said, I'm going to be looking at the some of the comments from this Truth About Ncuti Gatwa's exit from Doctor Who, and one person says at least it's not that he was greedy, and you know what? That is a good thing. At least he was not greedy and was holding out for money or whatnot. He, I guess you could say, was essentially kind of greedy because he had no idea when the show was going to come back on, and he did want to go on with his career, which is great. But then you have the lie, which is I'm old and I can't do this anymore, even though Peter Capaldi was, I believe, 55 years old, having previously done the Doctor. You had David Tennant, who started the Doctor around like 36 or something like that, and then he came back to play the 14th Doctor. So if Shooty's old, oh my word, everybody else is remarkably ancient. I thought the criticism was how young he was. I mean, I think the only person that was younger was Peter Davidson and also Matt Smith. Both actors were criticized not because of their race, but because of how young they were to be such an old Time Lord. And then, of course, both of them knocked it out of the park. Um, One person said, and this is really interesting, and there was a massive bunch of replies to this one, and I really like it. And it says, I don't like that they tried to gaslight us into believing this was always the plan. And there's a lot of likes for that one. And there's many different replies massively agreeing. Like, you know what? It's okay to have to pivot because, Disney was dragging their feet or wasn't quite sure. but to also, blame it because of race, blame it because of the messaging that, I think had they not had RTD had space in between filming season 1, season 2, I think season 2 would have been looking a lot different, and there would have been different like, some people believe that RTD doubled down in series 2, and I don't think so because I believe they were filmed back to back, and he had no time to react to what was going on. I think the only thing that they had reaction to would be to do this hurry up and change and create an alternate ending where, you had Bonnie Langford going from straight hair to suddenly after she comes off of her bike and pulls off her helmet, she now has a perm. Like, massive reshoots had to occur because the show was in free fall, I guess you could say. And people, agreed with this, said, "Yeah, I'm done because of this gaslighting. Just come clean and tell the truth. The fan base will support them." I totally agree. I, you know, I struggled with this season. I struggled with Jodie's season. I struggled with the tail end of Matt Smith's season and or run as the Doctor. And, I feel as though Peter Capaldi's was hit and miss, but Peter Capaldi just exhumed doctorness. I just wish he didn't have that one season where he was in, basically a hoodie for most of it. This one says, "Is this is probably wrong, but I wonder if Disney dragged their feet as if they didn't want to a black gay man leading." Have you seen what Disney has done casting wise? And, how like, what was it? I went to the movies the other day to go see Superman, and they're going to there's the a movie series, the Now You See Me, and I thought they were initially, it's like, okay, so only one of the original cast came back, and then they, have different nationalities and races because essentially the main 4 characters are all, white. And then you see that it is not that way, but they just kind of added to it. And that I feel as though that's what Disney does. Now you can see that they do that with, The Little Mermaid and with also with Snow White. And the problem is, and here's the beauty, I don't like the 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 story one, the African American story one. Not the American, the African story one. I don't like it, I don't find it interesting, but at least it was doing something new with a mythology that was little to not well known, and they tried to build a story around that. Unlike what Disney does, where they just like, "Let's do The Little Mermaid, change, instead of a white redheaded girl, black and redheaded." And then Snow White skin as white as snow. She was born in during a snowstorm, so that's where she gets her name from. Yeah, and then you have Peter Dinklage, who's just like, "I think that it's problematic that there are dwarves now. We're a much more evolved thing." So then they scrubbed that, and then suddenly there's an outcry because of what they did, and so then they have this horrific CGI elf stuff because they didn't want to lose money because they were trying to go too far in one direction. Just make a fun story. That's what I ask for all my entertainment. Entertain me, please. Let's see. Somebody says in this thread, realize they do have to walk a fine line to save face for all the stakeholders. Yeah, that is probably true. Or that could sink the show long term. The entire industry is like that because it's all about money, and media and companies are run by thin skinned people. Actually, I don't think it's thin skinned people. I think it's people fearful of making a mistake. And they're so fearful that they try to play it safe. And I think that, the uh, they thought initially race swapping both Little Mermaid and also Ariel, or no, same person, Snow White, was playing it safe. They had no idea that people were like actually not wanting it. And so now they've had to, and you could almost say maybe that they were worried about shooting. I think that the crying, the constant like babes, that drove me nuts. That is not a doctor line, in my opinion. That is not what the doctor says. Allons-y. Okay. Geronimo, okay. I think both of those are fine. But the clip that Ncuti used Babes and Hun was by far, like, astronomical compared to the Alonzi and Geronimo. Let's see. Um, yeah, people just discuss, yeah, they're not going to broadcast stuff. This was never the original plan. RTD was doing that because and causing way too much problem as it is. And it might have always been the plan when they started filming, but it's not gaslighting so much as complicated and revising ideas. Disagree with that person. Let's see. It says it makes sense because the episode they tried to gaslight everybody into believing in the whole Poppy retcon ending. Uh, that was just a sucky episode. Yeah, so a lot of people are not buying what the BBC, Doctor Who, and maybe even Disney or Ncuti are selling. So I find that the whole excuse that they have for why season 3 never happened, why they have to, turn the 15th Doctor maybe into not a Time Lord, but for somehow, um, Rose. There is another YouTube video that I watched, The Confused Antipose or something like that. He has a theory that maybe perhaps Ncuti is still going to be the 15th Doctor because that wasn't regenerated into a Rose Tyler ish Time Lord. And he'll make his appearance later. I think that's a very interesting theory. I don't think I buy it, but I think that is a fun and interesting theory. What are your thoughts about Ncuti, blaming him, being too old? Is it obviously it is Disney not picking up a second or another set of stories. But I think there is a lot more to this than meets the eye, much like Transformers. So please email your thoughts at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. You can tweet the show at Alhambra Podcast. DMs are open. And until next time, I will see you in time.
You have been listening to the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. Doctor Who is owned and trademarked by the BBC. Doctor Who Alhambra is not affiliated with the BBC or Big Finish. No infringement is intended. Visit our website at alhambrapodcast.weebly.com or email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. Tweet us at Alhambra Podcast. That is ALHAMBRA Podcast. Thank you.